It's just gone 5 PM, not normally a time I would consider setting off on my travels, but we've only just had the longest day, midsummer, so I've got probably at least 4 hours ahead of me before it even starts getting dark. And it was so hot during the day I just did not want to cruise, and I think that was a wise decision. But I would like to get to that water point and then turn down the Staffs Worcester canal. So I am going to set off now and see how far I get. It was still stiflingly hot even this late in the afternoon, with barely a breath of moving air to cool the passing mariner. That mariner was made all the hotter by needing to work the lock at Shugborough, which was just around the corner from where I'd been moored. Once through, you're at Great Haywood, and it's always a busy mooring spot. I've rarely seen a space available when I come past. There's a canal and river trust facilities point here with water and waste which I needed, so I brought the boat onto the landing, tied up loosely, and began refilling the water tank while I dumped my recycling. Great Haywood is the junction of the Trent and Mersey Canal with the Staffs and Worcester Canal, and it's the latter I was about to head down. Under that bridge behind me is where I need to go, so I'm going to reverse off the water point, spin 90 degrees, yes 90 degrees hopefully, and go straight down there. If we're very lucky, I'll get a space at Tixall Wide, which I've never been to, but I hear marvellous things about. It was a good thing I was doing this late on, because normally the junction can get very busy, but at 6 PM I could easily do my manoeuvre. Past the hire firm, this was filmed shortly before the lockdown restrictions were eased, so the fleet here was still on the moorings. And then there are 2 narrow gaps in quick succession, which must be awkward on a busy weekend. One of them's an aqueduct over the River Trent. Next is this spectacular green corridor, looking lovely in the evening sun as you head towards Tixall Wide. Why is it called Tixall Wide? Well, because as you can see, the canal is unusually wide here, and that's best shown from the air. The story goes that when the canal was built in 1771, the landowner didn't really want it coming through his property, and gave permission only on condition that it was made to look like a lake when viewed from his mansion, Tixall Hall. The hall itself had an interesting history, by the way, having been used as a prison for Mary Queen of Scots in 1586. Sadly, the mansion was demolished in 1921, but the gatehouse remains, which you can see here. And I got another view of it on a long zoom lens from the boat. Amazingly, I found a top spot at this very popular location, so I pulled in. It's 9:15. I've been at this fantastic spot for 4 days now, partly because it is a lovely spot, and also because we've had 2 days of pretty torrential rain and 2 days of quite a lot of heavy wind. Today looks like being the only half decent day this week, so I thought I would take my chance and head on. I'm going to try and get down to Penkridge, which is about 5 hours I reckon with all the locks. I think it's about 9 miles and 4 or 5 locks. And we'll see how we go. Fair bit of cloud around, but also a little bit of sunshine, which is nice. Bye bye then Tixall. I can certainly see why people like mooring here. This is where the frogs wait on lily pads for princesses to give them a snog. And this is a lock, the first of several I do on this trip. Not a very deep lock, admittedly, the kind where you can step on and off the boat regardless of whether the lock's full or empty.
and a rather nice lockkeeper's cottage beside it, now privately owned I suspect. While many boaters are content to fling open all the lock paddles with merry abandon, this can lead to the boat crashing about as the water floods in, so I prefer to do it cautiously, with half of one paddle to start, let the water in for a bit, see how the boat's doing, then raise the paddle the rest of the way. Arguably I'm overcautious, but there was no one waiting, so it didn't matter if I was slow. And only then do I open the other paddle, and that one gently as well. Some locks are more vicious than others, so it pays to pay attention when you're at one you've not used before. Some permanent moorings are immediately above the lock, and a lovely old crane on the side.
With Tixall Lock done, there's about 4 miles to go until the next one, so it's just easy, albeit somewhat twisty, cruising.
How's about this for a back garden? Hats off to the owners, or their gardening team, for keeping this in such neat shape. An aqueduct was ahead, but over what? The convenient sign tells you. Bridge 105 is a turnover bridge where the towpath changes sides, designed in such a way that a horse towing a barge would not have needed to be unhitched. As you approach, the path is on the left, but as you go under, it turns up and over, coming back down on the right, without the towing rope ever getting caught between the horse and the boat. You know how in prior episodes I've been pursued around the canals by power stations and CRT speedboats? This year it's the turn of Morris miners, this being the second one I've seen in the space of a fortnight. As I chugged along, a weary traveller came to rest for a few moments. If I recall correctly, these white markers indicate where wild flowers or some such have been planted along the towpath by volunteers. There are some rather odd spots chosen by the CRT to designate as official visitor moorings, and this is one. It's nice enough, but there's nothing here that I could see to warrant the mooring rings.
I'm approaching Bridge 101, which is pretty much the closest that this canal gets to the town of Stafford, from which the county of Staffordshire gets its name. According to the guidebook, there used to be a little canal arm that linked this canal to the centre of Stafford. That arm no longer exists, but if you look closely you might be able to see the remnants of where it went off in the brickwork around Bridge 101, so we'll have a look for that.
Not just old brickwork in fact, but an entire restoration project is underway here, which if you stand on tiptoes and squint you can just make out from a passing boat. Emerging from the undergrowth of a large park, you go past Stafford Boat Club, formed in 1964 and now boasting a clubhouse, painting dock and many moorings.
"5 miles done and 1 lock in precisely 2 hours means I'm cracking on a pace like the hooligan I am. And just around the corner is lock number 2 for me today.
There's the lock, and unlike the one at Tixall, this one's quite deep at 10 feet 3 inches. Luckily for me, another boater was just emerging from the depths, so I went straight in after them. This is the kind of lock where you have to use the ladders inset to the wall to get up off the boat, and they can be mucky and slippery. I thought you might like a different view of the boat rising in the lock. This is of course speeded up, but only by 4 times. Notice how long it takes for the last few inches of rise, because the higher you get, the less the water pressure is coming in from the other side, so the slower you go. And usefully for me, just as I left, another boat approached, so I didn't even have to stop and go back to close the gates. Wind generators on narrowboats sound great in theory, but rarely have enough of a constant high breeze to make them useful. This one's having a fair crack, mind you.
I'm approaching the village of Acton Trussell, after which it is 2.5 miles and 3 locks to Penkridge. There is actually a 4th lock right in the middle of Penkridge, just before the facilities point, and Penkridge is a sizable town with shops. I know there's a Sainsbury's and a Co-op, and I do need some food. I'd also like to stop at the facilities point, empty the loo cassettes, top up with water, all that usual stuff. And then after that, I'm not sure whether I'm going to head out of Penkridge or not, because there's a lot of locks as soon as you go straight out, and a rather noisy motorway. So I don't know whether to just stop in Penkridge, if there's a spot, or carry on and have to do all the hard work. See how I feel, I guess, after going shopping and doing all the service stuff.
You do get some unusual sights in canal towns. Not the swans resting on the grass, that's normal. But several houses in Acton Trussell had put mannequins on the canal side. I don't know why, but there were loads of them. I googled what it was all about, but to no avail.
It's 12:15, and thoughts in my stomach have turned to lunch. So I think what I'll do is just go through this next lock which is coming up, and then stop somewhere for a snack.
And brilliantly, there was a perfect spot behind this cruiser which I took with glee. Cheerio.